want to talk. Okay, thank you. So why NEACS AI and what is Northeast Annual Cybersecurity Summit? Are we done with solving the cybersecurity challenge and are we all cyber secure? Do we have perfect cybersecurity? In other words, is that why this conference is NEACS AI? And the answer is, you know the answer to that, right? No, we are not done. Mm-hmm. And if we take a exploding risk surface or discipline, such as cybersecurity, and you combine it with another really complex area, such as artificial intelligence, what you get is not double the complexity. I'm a gestalt psychologist, okay? And I believe the sum is going to be more than its parts. And in this case, it cannot be more true. So NEACS AI 21, or Northeast Annual Cybersecurity Summit, I'll start with what is the purpose and the vision for that. The first thing, we hear figures constantly, right? That this is a business driver. AI is the next revolution, or industrial revolution being the fourth one, or this is the third one, this is the fourth one, etc. What does that mean? Basically, what it means is it is a global impact on economy that we cannot ignore. We've heard numbers, right? $15 trillion in the next 15 years. That number personally doesn't mean anything to me because it's not even close to what I have in my bank account or ever will. But we have a big challenge here because we know wherever there is opportunity, there's innovation, and there is a risk if we don't do it right. So NEACS is traditionally a cybersecurity and rests on the CIA triad. Let me tell you, just to revise, you already know, is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So the partners we have in this are Security Organization, ISC Squared, Connecticut chapter. There's ISACA, which is a governance professional organization. And then there's IIA, the audit. Between these three and the CIA triad, that is the purpose of taking a very holistic approach to creating the right tone in the management down to the implementation lines, as we know what these professional organizations members play a role in a company. So what does a chief risk officer do? What does a CISO do? What does a chief auditor do, etc. So when we are taking a look at AI 21, NEACS AI 21, we are talking about a really fundamental problem, and that is, does security and AI, does it mean the same thing? Sorry, does security for AI and cybersecurity mean the same thing? And I would challenge that, because my vision of secure AI is one that is trustworthy. And based on my 25 years of creating strategic initiatives, what I did was take a look at how can we holistically create a cybersecurity strategy for AI, which is going to go beyond security. What do we need? When we say trust, what does that mean? Because that is what we need in order to fully have a holistic approach to a system that is secure, that has privacy, that has integrity, and that has transparency. And hence, I created this AI tips model, which I'll be happy to go into at some point, but not today. I will not have time because I really want to hear what Anne has to talk about as well. Before we talk about what I asked you a question, have we solved the cybersecurity challenge? Is everybody secure? And let me come back to that. What are some of the numbers? When we talk about AI how does it relate to AI? And if AI is a strategic technology, we already know that. It is something we want to succeed. Economic impact in $15 trillion, what does that mean? So some numbers from Statista and IBM I like to throw out. Total amount spent on AI worldwide today, by now, is 328 billion. What is the percentage of customers that chatbots can answer. We had a session on chatbots and governance by WEF yesterday. 87% of customer inquiries can be answered by chatbots. Now, what is the software revenue market for AI? So just breaking this down, right? 248 billion as of now. What is the amount and percentage increase in global GDP? That's the numbers we have been talking about in a lot of my talks. I talk about that to highlight that this is not something anybody can ignore. We as a society or a business or entrepreneurs or innovators, that is $15 trillion. And last but not least, what is the amount of data that we're looking at? World Economic Forum is talking about 44 zettabytes. What does that even mean, right? That means, and I love the way they have equated that, that is 40 times more bits of data than we have stars in the universe. I don't know which one may have been a better number for you, but for me, I could relate more to that. So I'm going to take 5 minutes of your time, and we'll continue into, we'll make up time for you. So let me talk about, I'm sharing a screen. Let me know if you can see when it pops up. To make sure I'm sharing the right screen, because we, okay, I'm sharing, it's saying, it should show. Let me just do the slideshow from the current. This is a slide I had shown yesterday. It is based on National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. That when we are talking, why do I say that we need trust in these systems, right? And security is not the only essential pillar for a trusted AI. Let's take a look at what the National Security Commission on AI in the US has identified as transforming the threat landscape that we all have to live and operate in. Current threats that can be used or created by AI. That's the first column. What are the threats from new threats coming out from AI systems? So threats advanced and new threats from. So what is completely unique to AI systems? What are threats to AI stacks? And there is a 700-page report on this, which is, each page, I think, is really worth consuming depending on which part of the organization you're in. Threats to AI stack themselves, and this is the whole stack of attack surface as AI is being built out. Is this important? Have we not done this before? Yes, we have, but AI poses a very different operating and a development environment. In a traditional environment, just to give you some examples, when we are talking about securing, let's say we differentiate between what do developers have access to so that they have a sandbox and they don't have PII written data, and what is the actual prod environment, because that's where you don't want to have any accounted for interruptions. You don't want to have access to prod data, for example. In this case, the developers in this case would be data scientists, for example. And AI machine learning, actually, let me differentiate. Machine learning in this case thrives on data. Without that, you cannot build these models and these systems. So that's a conundrum right there. For security purposes, you cannot differentiate development and prod. There is no such, it's not possible unless you have some strategic view of what kind of data do you have? What are the technologies, such as there are synthetic data being produced that you can use, etc. But the problem is, if we don't know about this, we're not going to be able to use it. And that kind of, I would like to move into the next part of it, which is, what are the future threats via AI systems? rapid machine to machine escalation via automation, etc., AI-enabled augmentation by peer companies, etc. But my point being, if we don't build these systems securely and with transparency, then what are the future threats that we can be even more prone to? AI and trustworthiness. What is the National Commission referring to? What are they asking for? And there again, it's a very complex. If you even read this, I've just highlighted that what makes AI technology trustworthy would be accuracy, resiliency, security, explainability, safety, and accountability. We are used to some of these, but we don't have something in hand that we can take and implement across the board. And it doesn't matter to me if you are in healthcare or in any other critical infrastructure, or social media can be a critical infrastructure in today's world, right? So we have to be really careful how we tread these waters. AI GANs, what they are, why we should be afraid. We saw an excellent presentation by Manon yesterday from the Amsterdam police. And she talked about how you can take a freely downloadable tool and create something that is so difficult for the human ear to even detect, as in a synthetic voice. Taking a sample of somebody's voice and putting it in, and being able to fool someone quite easily. And I won't go more into that, but this is not something you want to ignore. GANs are what has been described by some as the next biggest thing that we should be watching out for. My intent is not to scare anyone, but really that if we do it right, we have to take an approach that is consistent across, regardless of which industry you are in, financial, healthcare. We had a great talk by Sri Muthu yesterday on the healthcare state of affairs. We don't have a room to make the same mistakes that we have done with conventional system development and bolting on security afterwards. We just will not pan. What is the current state of security? There is no current standard best practice for even writing secure AI algorithms. AI algorithms, as you know, that is basically like an equation for a machine learning application, and the data is what it acts on. So if we don't have these developed right now, this is what I was referring to yesterday. We're drinking from a fire hose. We are going to have a lot of repetition. We're going to have a lot of effort that we'll have to go back and do again. And there comes the dollars, right? There comes the time lost. So if you are truly interested in creating this holistically, then you are really in the right place, because that's what we want to do at NEACS and the Trusted AI affiliate that we started. Enterprises, let me finish with this, because these are all important points. Machine learning projects, these may not even be at the, they may not be a correct inventory of enterprise, that what applications are in place, for example. And if you don't have that, you would not be able to put in the right controls, for example, or even know how to address the risk. So this is, again, we're used to this. This is a business management problem, top to bottom, bottom to top. And then source code, just because this is AI doesn't mean we don't have the same problems we had in traditional cybersecurity. I would not have time to go through all of it, but I'm just going to say this. The entire keynote, because it was actually meant for longer than 15 minutes. But I do want to make sure that we bring in all our experts. And so we'll probably be repeating, having another session for this. This is something that we have to be aware of, that this is not a state problem. By state, I mean nation state problem. How does the current type of, these are the types of warfare. And if you look at this, there are so many areas in here. Technology, conventional warfare, for example, was fought between countries, right? Now, because of the digital front we are in, each one is armed with a cell phone, with a Google device, with or Alexa, or self-driving car, or a semi-autonomous car. Where are we not finding? Let me quickly show you. This is where we are at in terms of generating data, consuming data, and where we have AI systems that can either they're already deployed, or they are going to be deployed so we can do things that we are best at, right? So this is truly a technology that we all can benefit from. And I cannot even highlight all the fantastic thing that is areas that are already we are seeing come out of artificial intelligence, data crunching abilities, right? But without building these systems with the essential pillars of trust, which is security being one of them, privacy, I think, is now an essential pillar of cybersecurity for building these systems. But integrity of the algorithms, and not integrity as in the CIA triad I talked about earlier, as well as explainability, is absolutely critical for us to take a advantage and maintain it. I don't have time to go into why this is cyber warfare is a big problem right now, because there are state actors who have openly declared that they are not, well, I'm not going to go too much into that, but let me see if I can share one slide. This is a slide from, no, not the slide is new, but the information is from 2018. Internet traffic destined for Google Cloud was found to be rerouted to ISPs in Russia, China, and Nigeria. And this attack on Google intercepted search, cloud, and business services. Does anybody that is on the call or in the meeting, or that you work for or in your world, who you think may be impacted by a cloud service provider? How is this even possible? Right? Do we know, or do we have a way of counteracting something like this? Do we know what's happening? I will give you an example. I will tell you how this was possible. Because unlike any other country, USA does have a ISP, which is owned by a state-owned company, which is typically would not happen in any other country. Okay, and think about it in very layman terms, as in, even though we are all a security professional here, as a company, you secure everything around your house, your driveway. You have a Fort Knox around in your driveway. But the ISP is what is connecting your fort to the rest of the world. And if your data has to go only within the company, then yes, you're fine. But if you want to do business, and if you want to be, even if you're not doing business on the cloud, right? You're doing any business, think email, think anything, right? Digital. You have that traffic, that car has to leave your driveway. And if that driveway is leading to a road which is maintained or is hosted by a state-owned ISP, internet service provider, then that is where the issue came in, right? Significant. I cannot stress this enough. So yes, are we at the cusp of combining two exploding worlds of complexity? Yes, we are. cybersecurity and AI, these are systems of high impact. And if we don't build them securely right now, they are already happening. I talked about algorithmic failures that are happening now. So at this point, I think it is the perfect time to switch over to our next keynote speaker, Anne. And Anne's going to talk to us about privacy by design. Thank you.
Oh, I really enjoyed your slides and your comments a great deal, Pamela. They're wonderful. May I begin now?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you very much. And could I have my slides, please?
Yep. Pamela, I need your help on that, please.
You want me to bring it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me
That'll
one
probably
second.
bring that one up. So just give her a sec.
Of course. Fascinating discussion on AI, security, lack thereof, surveillance abounding, and so much bias that could be perpetrated. It is,
Yeah.
very interesting times we live in that are going to get much more complicated, I'm sure, as a result of the way AI proceeds. But it's wonderful to have this microscope on it that you are featuring. And I'm going to be switching. I'm going to be talking about privacy for starters and explaining what privacy by design is all about, and then applying that to AI. So that's how I will be moving forward. Okay, so we'll start. Thank you very much. We'll start with the next slide, please. And I always like to start by dispelling the myths. So if we could kindly move forward to the next slide. I always say, let's dispel the myths. And in the next slide, one of the biggest myths is that privacy is all about secrecy, and that, well, if you have nothing to hide, what's the problem? You have nothing to fear. That's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. Privacy is not about secrecy. It's about, in the next slide, please, it's about control. It's all about personal control. In the next slide, please. In the next slide, I talk about privacy being about personal control. This is critical. The individual has to be the one to determine the use and disclosure of his or her personal information. User control and freedom of choice are critical. And one of the reasons for this is context is key. Only the individual knows the sensitivity or lack thereof associated with their personal information. The Germans have a wonderful term for this they created called informational self-determination, that it should be the individual who determines the fate of his or her personal information. And this is critical because, as I said, only you, the individual, know if something is sensitive or not. I always say to people, look, you want to give away your personal information, be my guest, as long as you make the decision to do so. User control is critical. In the next slide, please. I also talk about how privacy is essential to freedom. Privacy forms the foundation of our freedom. It's a necessary condition for societal prosperity and well-being. All of the things that we value in terms of innovation, creativity, and the resulting prosperity of a society requires freedom. This is essential, and you cannot have freedom without privacy. We know this historically through all the times we've gone through where privacy has been stripped from individuals. Without privacy, individual human rights, property rights, civil liberties, none of these conceptual engines of innovation and creativity can exist in any kind of meaningful manner. It's absolutely critical. And surveillance is the exact opposite. It's the antithesis of privacy. It makes you go inside. It usurps your limited cognitive bandwidth. Sorry, I'm a psychologist. I talk in terms of cognitive bandwidth, but what it means is instead of you having crazy blue sky thinking and wild ideas, you go inward, you're looking over your shoulders, you're concerned about who's watching, and that limits all creativity, innovation goes out the door. In the next slide, please, let me tell you a little bit about privacy by design. I created privacy by design in the very first days of my first term as privacy commissioner of Ontario, Canada. And I served for 3 terms, but when I first started, I wanted a different model because, you see, as I said, I'm a psychologist, I'm not a lawyer. So when I went to the office filled with brilliant lawyers, they applied privacy laws, which is very important, but it was always after the fact, after the privacy harms had arisen. I wanted a model of prevention, much like a medical model of prevention, where you can prevent the privacy harms from arising. So literally at my kitchen table over 3 nights, I created Privacy by Design, which was all about being proactive and preventing the harms from arising. And I took it into the office, and after a few weeks, I sold it to the lawyers, and we took off. In the next slide, please. We had great success with it in 2010. Privacy by Design was adopted as an international standard, followed by all privacy commissioners and data protection authorities. Privacy commissioners have a conference, an annual international conference once a year. It's usually in Europe. It was in Jerusalem in 2010. And at the end of a 3 or 4 day conference, you're allowed, commissioners have a closed session for half a day, and you're allowed to introduce ideas that you would like everyone to vote on in terms of becoming an international standard. And I was delighted. I suggested, recommended that Privacy by Design be adopted as an international standard that would be embedded in new technologies and business practices, baked into the code right from the outset, and as an essential component of fundamental privacy and data protection. And to my surprise, it was unanimously passed. And I was delighted, but the reason I was surprised is most privacy commissioners are what I call lawyers, brilliant lawyers who love applying Section 29, Sub 2, Part A to the fact situation and getting a wonderful result. And that's invaluable, but it's not Privacy by Design. So afterwards, I went around and I thanked all the commissioners, and I inquired as to their strong support. And they said, Anne, in this day and age of massive social media and online connectivity and phishing, etc., we have to have something other than privacy laws. And the next slide, please. They said through privacy laws, we're just reaching the tip of the iceberg, that the majority of breaches are remaining largely undetected. And we can't have that. We can't have most of our privacy breaches and infractions unchallenged, unknown, unregulated. So they said, we accept that regulatory compliance is no longer sufficient in and of itself. It is no longer sustainable as the sole model for ensuring the future of privacy. And I was just delighted with this because it mirrored my views on this. And we've had such great success with it. Privacy by Design has now been translated into over 40 languages, and it's followed all around the world. On the next slide, please. These are the languages it's been translated to. And we were just so excited by this. Not a week goes by when I don't hear from some jurisdiction as to what they're doing and how they're incorporating it, and it's wonderful. Let me tell you the 2 essentials to Privacy by Design. In the next slide, please. I've talked about the first one. You have to be proactive to try to prevent the privacy harms from arising. But equally important, you have to banish zero-sum models. In the next slide, please. Zero-sum is a win-lose either-or model. It means you can only have privacy versus security or privacy versus data utility. And I can tell you, it's never privacy that wins over the other interests, nor am I suggesting it should be, but I sure as heck wasn't going to have it lose out all the time. And it's nonsense. It's such a dated model. You can have privacy and security, privacy and data utility, privacy and marketing. Believe it or not, the Canadian Marketing Association often invites me to give a keynote at their international conference every year. And I always start by saying, I'm sure I'm the least popular speaker here today. And fortunately, they laugh and they say, no, we know we've got to listen to what you're saying. But I would say privacy is not anti-marketing, it's pro-choice. You have to give people an opportunity to choose. And the next slide, please. So the positive sum model is changing from the zero sum. It creates a win-win. It's not either or. It's privacy and fill in the blank. It's win-win. And I remember Bruce Schneier, brilliant cryptographer, told me years ago, he said, look, and this zero-sum model involves unnecessary trade-offs and false dichotomies. It's nonsense. And it's as simple and as difficult as replacing the versus with and. Bring an and we can do multiple interests. In the next slide, please. I'm going to go through very, very quickly. There are 7 foundational principles to privacy by design. I've already talked about the first one, proactive, to prevent the harms from arising. Let me talk about privacy as the default setting for a moment. This is critical. It's a game changer, because what it says to your customers is you don't have to search through all the legalese in the privacy policy and the terms of interest. And in searching for the opt-out box, it says, do not use my personal information for any purpose other than the primary purpose of the data collection. Nobody does that anymore. Life is too short. It just takes hours to do that. But it doesn't mean that people don't care deeply about privacy. People are more concerned about privacy in the last 2 years than ever before. All of the public opinion polls in the last 2 years, Pew Internet Research, etc., have placed privacy concern at the 90 percentile. 90% very concerned about their privacy. 92% concerned about loss of control over their personal information. Privacy is the default setting, flips that on its head, and says to people, you don't have to ask for privacy. We give it to you automatically. It is automatically embedded into our systems by design. We can only use the personal information that you gave us for the primary purpose of the data collection that you consented to. Beyond that, we can't use it for anything else. And if a secondary use arises down the road that we'd like to use your information for, we have to come back to you and seek your positive consent once again. This is a game changer. Companies that have become certified for privacy by design have told me that this builds trust like no other. And as you know, there's such a trust deficit right now. This restores trusted business relationships. Companies love it. Okay, embedded in design speaks for itself as well. You bake it into the code so people can't forget to have privacy. It's an essential component of your design and your operations. I've talked already a lot about full functionality. Get rid of zero sum, substitute positive sum with multiple positive gains. Let me talk about security for a moment. While the term privacy subsumes a much greater set of protections and security alone, in this day and age of daily online attacks and phishing and hacking, if you don't have a strong foundation of security from end to end with full lifecycle protection, you're not going to have any privacy. So you always have to start with strong security. Visibility and transparency is critical. I always tell people, companies, look, it's not your information. You may have custody and control of someone's information, but it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the data subject. So give them a right of access to their own information. And companies have told me they love this because when they do give a right of access to their customers, the customers find the inaccuracies in the data. They'll go back to the company and say, no, that was 2 years ago. Here's the accurate, correct information for today. So companies have told me it increases the accuracy and the quality of the data that they held. And respect for user privacy, if you keep it user-centric, all of this flows from it. It just works beautifully. And we've had such success with this. You might say, well, this is interesting, but it's too hard to do, right? Wrong. In the next slide, please. Take a look at this paper, Operationalizing Privacy by Design. It actually consists of 22 papers that we wrote with all of the major tech companies. Think of any major tech company, Microsoft, Intel, HPE, Oracle, IBM, of course, and I'm forgetting a number of them. We wrote papers on all of these areas to show companies, to show people, the public, how much you can protect privacy in all these different areas. Surveillance cameras, biometrics, NFC, mobile communications, smart meters, the smart grid, remote home healthcare, and on and on. It just continues. We have had great success in all of these areas. So please take a look at this and you'll see that it is amazing how much you can do. In the next slide, please. I had this wonderful letter from JIPTEC, the Japanese Information Processing Development Center, near the end of my last term as commissioner. And they said, we've heard from Japan's private sector companies that we need to insist on the principle of positive sum, not zero sum, and become enlightened with privacy by design. And I thought, if the Japanese can understand the value of positive sum over zero sum, and English is not their primary language, then surely the rest of us can figure this out. Now, you might say, okay, well, what's it going to cost me? It's going to be really expensive, right? Wrong. In the next slide, please. Of course, there will be a cost associated with doing it proactively, but it will be a fraction of the cost you will incur if you don't do it. Because these days, when there are privacy breaches, data breaches, etc., the cost, it's not just a lawsuit, they're class action lawsuits that are invoked that can cost companies millions of dollars. And the damage to your brand, the damage to your reputation may be irreparable. The loss of consumer confidence and trust that results from this is off the scale. So get smart, be proactive, embed privacy by design into your operations, and then reap the rewards. Now, on the next slide, please, I'm going to switch to Europe. What's happened in the EU? They introduced the General Data Protection Regulation that came into effect in 2018, and this strengthened and unified privacy data protection for individuals within the EU, but it also gave citizens much greater control over their personal data, their personal information. And you see, what you have to understand is countries all around the world want to engage in trade with the EU, and they want to have what's called essential equivalence, which means that the laws they have in their country have the strength of the GDPR so that they can engage in business and trade with the EU without any repercussion. Canada used to have essential equivalence with the GDPR, but they don't anymore. So we're upgrading our laws as are countries all around the world. Now, one of the things that really excited me about the GDPR, in addition to all this, and in the next slide, please, they included for the first time privacy by design and privacy as the default in the GDPR. It's in there. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, that was huge. So obviously, I'm very excited about this. And it got a lot of people interested in privacy by design. In the next slide, please. Information Age wrote an article about this years ago, and they said that it's not too much of a stretch to say that if you've implemented privacy by design, you've mastered the GDPR. Let me assure you, there's much more to the GDPR than privacy by design. But the reason she said this is if you actually do privacy by design, then you will automatically be fulfilling a number of the other articles of the GDPR because you'll be elevating your privacy and data protection so strongly. So it's a very positive development. In the next slide, please. A number of companies have been interested. So we now offer privacy by design certification in partnership with KPMG. We've had great success with this. And in the next slide, please. I offer an online course because so many people globally are interested in the global privacy by design framework. So you can take a look at this if you have any interest. Now let me switch in the next slide to machine learning and AI, which is what you're all interested about. In the next slide, please, when you think about artificial intelligence, can AI be accepted at face value? No, we know we can't. Can we place our confidence in AI? There's a real question mark, as Pamela indicated at the beginning. We must look under the hood at the algorithms used. Algorithmic integrity is absolutely critical and in question now. In the next slide, please, people talk about unfairness by algorithm. They talk about the need to distill the harms of automated decision-making, that this is becoming such a huge issue that we just need to address this. And in the next slide, please, when algorithms discriminate, it is appalling. I mean, there is such, first of all, such faith in algorithms. They just assume that the algorithms are objectives, but that's not the case. Software is not free of human influence, of course not. Algorithms are written by individuals, and they're adjusted to what they do based on people's behaviors, people's beliefs. So algorithms can and do reinforce human prejudices, and this is what we must become aware of, totally. In the next slide, please. There was a global commission on internet governance a number of years ago, and they confirmed the view that algorithms are not necessarily neutral, that there are built-in values and biases that serve certain business models that can discriminate and create economic harm. Major concern is the increasing use of algorithms across society comes with so many risks that the underlying data and the algorithms can lead to totally false results. In particular, when the algorithms are used for automated decision-making and people don't actually look under the hood at the decision-making taking place to ensure that it's fair and equitable. That often doesn't happen. In the next slide, please. And that's led to what a number of people call the tyranny of algorithms, which can be extremely damaging. It's all about how your past, when it is especially reduced to bits of data, are often taken out of context. And when it's taken out of context, it completely takes on a different flavor. This can dictate what happens to you today, or God forbid, tomorrow, in a completely unfair way. And that's why it is so absolutely critical to interrogate algorithms, to have algorithmic examination, always look under the hood. I used to say, trust but verify. Now I don't say trust, I just say verify, because we have to address these issues. It's critical. In the next slide, please. There have been calls for algorithmic transparency, and these are increasing now, fortunately. Algorithmic decision-making can have unbelievable life-altering consequences. So we have to know, what are the assumptions that have been baked into the code? We can never just take algorithms at face value. We can't. There's the likelihood of potential bias, unconscious bias is there. And so we must always verify the results that arise. In the next slide, please. Is AI fair? I think we've addressed that question already, that bias is a critical part of AI, unfortunately. It means that if researchers train an AI on data that are skewed, which they often are, for race or gender, education, wealth, any of these points of bias, the AI will, of course, learn that bias. AI takes on the biases of the data set it learns from. We know this. So if we want to, for example, predict future criminals anywhere in the US and everywhere else, it shows a higher risk scores and recommended harsher actions for Black people, for people of color, than white people. And this is based on the racial bias that exists in America's criminal incarceration data. That's just one example. We have to be absolutely critical in terms of our skepticism. In the next slide, please, I'll switch to Canada, because in the next slide, there was a challenge that was posed several years ago by a federal inmate, Mr. Hewitt, who was an Indigenous character, a Métis background. And he challenged the use of actuarial risk assessment tools that were used to make decisions about him, his likelihood of the risk of recidivism. And he said, look, these tools have been developed and tested on predominantly non-Indigenous populations. And so there's no research confirming that they're valid when it applies to my population, Indigenous persons. And this was an amazing case. In the next slide, please. The decision that arose was amazing. The Supreme Court of Canada said that correctional services had breached its obligations to take all responsible steps to ensure that any information about an offender that is used is accurate, up to date, and complete as possible. They said this is critical, and it doesn't exist. This particular case highlighted a very common concern in the algorithm decision-making context, that either the data that were used to develop and train the algorithms or the assumptions coded into the algorithm, that this created bias, that biases that can lead to inaccurate predictions about individuals who happen to fall outside of the dominant group that has influenced the data and the assumptions that have been made. And so this was a very, very important case in Canada that has really led to the looking under the hood, so to speak, in terms of algorithmic discrimination, et cetera. And in the next slide, I'm going back to 2013, but I love this quote from the Data Scientists Conference in 2013. They said 88% of the data scientists that were surveyed at this conference said the consumers should worry about the privacy issues associated with big data that were predicated on the use of machine learning algorithms. These are the data scientists themselves saying that basically the great majority of 88% said that people should be very worried about the use of machine learning algorithms. This is not what we want the world to be looking at. This is not how we want machine learning and AI to be viewed. In the next slide, please. I'm going to talk just a little bit about privacy by design, which was identified as the key to the future of artificial intelligence. And I'm bringing you this quote just because I want to tie in the privacy by design that I talked about at the beginning in terms of the need to be proactive, look under the hood, bake privacy into the code, into the algorithms that you use, into the AI that you are building. And so I created, in the next slide, please, AI ethics by design. I thought, apply my privacy by design to the AI principles and get something like ethics by design. And I'm not going to go through this all because we're running out of time, but I just wanted you to know that we can apply privacy by design to AI, to ethics, to algorithmic machine learning functions. All kinds of things can be addressed by facilitating ethical design and data symmetry, by building it up front in terms of how transparency and accountability of algorithms are created and how essential transparency and accountability of algorithms are. And in order to execute that, we must have algorithmic oversight and responsibility. We have to be assured of the fact that someone is looking at this well in advance, and it's not just being processed automatically. This is absolutely essential. So in the next slide, please, I'm going to end by, next slide, please. Let me just end by reminding you, sorry, if you can go back one, I'll just do my concluding thoughts. Privacy and security risks are best managed by proactively embedding the principles of privacy by design to prevent the harms from arising, avoid the data breaches. But this also applies equally to AI and algorithmic decision-making. And focus on prevention. It's so much easier if we address these issues up front, build in privacy, security, address all of these issues in a proactive manner, which also reflects the most ethical treatment of personal data. If you remember nothing else, please remember this: abandon zero-sum thinking. It's not either or, win-lose. It's not privacy versus AI or security or data utility. It's always and. We can and must do both: positive sum, multiple gains. And one of my colleagues in Germany, Kai Rannenberg, he said to me years ago, he says, if people are smart, they'll lead with privacy by design, but most people will probably just get by getting privacy by chance, or first they'll get privacy by disaster, and you have the regulator coming knocking at your door to investigate. That's the last thing you want. So in the next slide, please. This is how you can contact me if you have any questions. And if you happen to follow people on Twitter, every morning between 5 and 6 a.m., I tweet out the latest stories of the day that often come from Europe and abroad. So you can follow me on Twitter if you want to follow what's happening with privacy and security related issues. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for any questions.
Yes, let's take a couple of questions. Is that right? Is that okay, Mo?
Fine with me. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
And, you know, I talked about algorithmic failures yesterday, and I'm really interested about the integration of what you talk about, privacy and security, as being, you know, integrated into your privacy by design. Huge fan of,
you know, it's in this day and age, you have to address all of these issues. You can't just say, well, privacy is just about this little corner. No, it's affected dramatically, as you pointed out, by all of the algorithmic activities taking place under the hood, often that we're not aware of.
This is awesome.
Thank you.
Belle, did you have any questions coming in? I know.
Perhaps I've answered all the questions. That would be great.
I think you did. You did such a good job. You left them speechless.
There you go. Well, they can always send me emails. Take a look at what I do. I'm happy to respond afterwards.
Yeah.
I'll be following you on Twitter in the morning. It'll help me to get up at that time. So
yeah, I'm just thinking I was going to follow you now. I'm on Twitter in the morning, so it's perfect.
Thank you very much. My husband is a saint.
It's 5 to 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll definitely share the your contact information now. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank
yeah.
you so much. All the best. Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you, Ann.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now that we're going to transition over, in the interest of time, so Patricia, I'll give you a heads up. Let's try to go between 1:25 and 1:30. We'll steal the 5-minute break time. We're going to drop that and move right to your presentation. So.
All right, that's perfect for me.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. And now we're going to talk about ethics by design. So a lot of designing going on today, but it's really a very timely and nice follow-up topic. So we do certainly appreciate that. And for everybody to, Patricia is a researcher at Agora Lab and a Ph.D. candidate in AI ethics at the University of Montreal. So an Agora Lab is an interdisciplinary academic laboratory that develops deliberative ethics of AI and digital innovation, analyzes societal and political aspects of the emerging algorithmic, I can't tell a tough word, algorithmic society. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's all really relevant, and we're just really glad to have you on board for today. So we will let you go in, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, William, and thank you, Pamela, to have invited me to that conference, which is very interesting. I don't know if Anna is gone, or because I was really happy to hear her presentation, because privacy by design is actually part of my idea also, because my idea is to think of ethics by design. So she talked a little bit of ethics by design. So what ethics by design is to put principles into the algorithms, which is a very complicated and a very difficult goal, but I think we can go there. So privacy by design is one subject, but I think there's more to be done, and because I'm more concerned about automated decision making, and within automated decision making, even if we have good data, or if we have the data that we want, even if we have privacy, even if we have security, there could be some mistakes done by AI, and I think it's a good time to take time also to just to reflect and to see what's inside the all those systems, to see if they could harm human rights. So I will talk first about the context and profile I'm working on, because I'm a PhD student. Second, I will just talk a little bit of what's ethics by design. Then we will see what AI and decision making could be and with ethics by design. And we'll see a little case study with justice predictive. And after that, I will link my presentation to cybersecurity. Sorry. So context and profile. So as you said, William, I'm a PhD student. I just want to make sure that everybody understand the ecosystem where I come from. So I'm a PhD student at the University of Montreal with Professor Marc-Antoine Dillac. Marc-Antoine Dillac is famous in Canada. So I will talk to him of him a little bit. He's an associate professor of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Montreal. He's also a shareholder of CIFAR in AI ethics. I will just say what is CIFAR after. He's also director of Agora Lab at Mila. He's co-director for deliberation function at ODIA. I will say to you what is it exactly. And he's a member of AI Advisory Council for the Government of Canada. So he's my director. So I will work with him for the next 3 years. And my reflection will be, my test subject will be under what conditions is the implementation of virtue inside intelligent decision-making systems possible. So it's a reflection in ethics by design, and more precisely for automated decision-making system. Also, I'm also a journalist at C'est Sciences IA. It's a French media, which is 100% dedicated to artificial intelligence in Quebec. In that journal, I do some analysis for ethics, for AI ethics. So I talk about consequentialism. I talk about crypto money. A lot of topics are there, but I'm also putting all the words because I want everybody to understand what is happening there in AI. Also, I'm a researcher for Agora Lab, which is owned by Marc-Antoine Delac, and I'm also president at NEACS Intelligence. I will tell you a little bit what is my objectives there, and I'm an author. See, I have a book. I will launch my book for Christmas, but it's going to be a book on AI ethics. The title is Why AI Needs Ethics, and it's a reflection, an invitation to reflection and open debates about intelligent technology. So what is CIFAR exactly? Because I want to explain a little bit what is CIFAR, because it's great organization, and I'm proud to be part of. CIFAR is a community of 400 researchers in 18 countries. It's focusing on quantum computing and AI, on innovation theories, on social determinants of health, and also on microbiome. I was part of the Pan-Canadian Artificial Intelligence Strategy. I worked for them. So what is it exactly? It's the world's first national AI strategy. And the Pan-Canadian Artificial Intelligence Strategy is founded by the government of Canada. Next, Gautrin, which is my professor, is also a shareholder of CIFAR. So the Canadian CIFAR AI Shares Program is part of CIFAR Pan-Canadian Strategy. Program provides long-term dedicated research funding to support their research program and help them train the next generation of AI leaders. So I was part of a workshop with them. There are 109 Canadian CIFAR AI shares, advancing research in the range of fundamental and applied AI topics, from drug discovery and machine learning, for health, autonomous vehicle, materials discovery, human AI interaction, natural language prediction, and more. So they are based at Canada's 3 institutes. So ME in Edmonton, MILA in Montreal, and Victor Institute in Toronto. So MILA is my organization here in Montreal. What is Agora Lab? Because Marc-Antoine Delac is also director of Agora Lab, and I'm an official researcher for Agora Lab. So Agora Lab is an interdisciplinary academic laboratory that develops a deliberative ethics of AI. So it's focused on deliberation. So it's a really democratic approach. So we want to know what population thinks about AI, and especially about threats for human rights. So we have some workshop, and with the workshop for a CIFAR, we had to make a workshop and to identify with population what were the ethical challenges, and after that we collect all the challenges that were put on the table, and we make a report, and we give this to the government of Canada. So that was the open dialogue on AI. So it was launched by UNESCO, and it's a global consultation leading to the adoption of the first global standard setting instrument on ethics of AI. So UNESCO has collected comments from an online survey, regional consultation, and the open multi-stakeholder and citizen deliberation process by Mila and Algora Lab. So I was part of the project. Algora Lab organized closed deliberation workshops and open discussion session for the guidance, I don't know how to pronounce, of AI development. So just to tell you the project, the past timeline of the project. So there was a different step in this project. And if you look at July, I was part of the organization and coordination for the deliberation workshop. And we had to make a report in August. So I took part of that project in July. Mila, I don't know if you know about Mila, but Mila is a great organization. My professor is an associate academic member of Mila. Joshua Bengio, who is well known for his research on deep learning, is the director of that organization. So it's a community of more than 500 researchers specialized in machine learning and dedicated to scientific excellence and innovation based in Montreal. So it's all those organizations work together. And there's another one, it's Obvia. Professor Delac is co-director for the deliberation function at Obvia. So Professor Delac brought up the declaration, Montreal Declaration, which is built on principles. And if you declare it from the Declaration of Montreal, you say that you will look at the principle before you go on to conceptions, system conceptions. So what is OBVIA exactly? It's an international observatory for discussion and reflection by all stakeholders concerned by AI, in its development and its use. So the observatory brings together more than 200 researchers worldwide, focused on maximizing the positive effects of AI and minimizing its negative impacts. So it's really like an international open place for debate and discussion. I'm also president at NAPS Intelligence. So what is my my objective there? It's so as Anna, I'm really looking for international standards. So because there's two different approach. There's a approach from the law and the approach from the ethics. The approach from the law usually, well, it could be international, but usually is linked with the country and the government of the country. So my aim is more for like Anna, for international standards in the ethics of AI. So I know it's a major project. I know there's a lot of people working over there, but I think we can join our strengths to work together. I was really happy to hear about what Anna is doing, and I'm sure that we can talk together and maybe we can work together because we have the same objectives also. But the difference with me is that I want to link my objective with the United Nations. So I'm in a discussion with them because I want to build a certification aligned with the UN SDGs, and especially with the 16 SDG, which is peace and justice. It says, promote the advent of peaceful and inclusive societies for the purpose of sustainable development, ensure access to justice for all, and put in place institutions that are effective and accountable. So this is the UN objective, and I want to link my research with the UN SDGs to make sure that businesses are linked with objectives that respect human rights and justice. So there's a few targets that were already developed by the United Nations. And I want to really analyze the targets and make sure that we can we can put some standards there, and we can link system conception with those objectives. So second, what is exactly ethics by design? So Anna talked about privacy by design. So we understand that's it's baking inside. She said it's really inside the algorithms. So it's not I won't say that it's something that you have to think at the beginning. It's something that you have to think at all steps of the conception. And it's also something that you have to think in all the life circle of the data. So it's not like a linear process that you say, so at the beginning, I will put the principles, and so I will be happy because I know principles will be regulated, or it's some things that you have to think all the time, and you have to rethink all the time, because machine learning are changing, and it's something that has to be adaptive to. So I'm sorry, I will just move that a little bit. I am also I saw that research from a German researcher from the Munich Center of Technology and Society, and I was very curious about his research, and I want to talk a little bit about his approach, because in philosophy, in ethics, we have different approach. I mean, different from scientific, because we are not in quantitative issue. We are more in qualitative issue. So this research, sorry, was interesting for me, because first steps, he analyzed the AI and robotic systems are characterized by high and increasing level of autonomy. So he first start is thinking about, okay, we have more autonomy in systems. Second, applications in fields such as autonomous driving, service robotics, and digital personal assistant move closer to you. So it moves closer to you. It goes into your life differently. AI ethics, which recognize that the action of autonomous machine entails moral dimensions. Sorry, it means that some ethics approach may not think that the technology is a moral agent, but I want you to start my research and discussion with that presumption that AI systems has a moral dimension. So how can we build moral machines? So that's really the questions. So he says all ethics for new technology. Why? Because I am very conscious about the type of ethics that we will put into the systems. The ethics, I will tell you that there's different types of ethics, but the ethics I want to put into, I want to reflect on is the virtue ethic by virtue. So I will explain to you a little bit later. So it's a combination with modern NI, due to its focus on learning from experience. So we will see how it evolves, how the ethics itself could evolve. And step 5, imitation learning from moral examples. So a central concept in virtue ethics can solve the value element problem. And at the end, intelligent systems, and though with the virtue of temperance and friendship to human, would not have the desire for limitless self-improvement. So that is what he proved at the end of his research. So I want to look at this research. I think it's interesting, and I will propose something new. So this is my position. I want to analyze the possibility for having virtuous machines. So my first step is to say that virtue is the guiding principle of rightness, of rightness, and it's rooted in intrinsically social perspective. Sorry. So what I mean is that virtue is a principle, and you cannot think about virtue with a person that is not a social person. So virtue is always a social notion. So it's difficult because we have to think about robots as social agents. After that, equipped with a social intelligence, virtue as a practical and an empirical dimension. So it's not, we will see what is bottom up from top down and down up. People will say that it's a top down strategy, but it's not specifically top down, because also it could, like the algorithm, it could learn by its experience. So it's really into the machine learning process that the principle would have to be designed. So there's a necessity for moral principle for predictive justice application, and we will see why. Ethics of virtue is also necessarily hybrid. That's what I say. It's top down and down up, because it's perfect. It could be perfectible by experience. Whoops, sorry. My last point is that there's a normative question. Because actually, as we said, and as we all know, there's no actual legal framework, and we have to see if virtue can be a guiding principle for rightness action. So, what is exactly ethics by design? I will go fast on this because we already talked about it. So, we have to have in mind that there's three big family for ethics. So there's one family is virtue ethics, which is the one that I will be focusing on. It deals with the moral agent and its virtue. And virtue are a character disposition constructed by arbitration. The second big family is consequentialism. And I can say that today is 80% of our ethics is consequentialism, and it's a way to ethics analyze the consequence of action, and if an action has bad consequences, it says that the agent is doing wrong. So it's a practical means of determining a moral course of action. And we live in that kind of approach, and it serves sometimes it serves also utilitarianism in society. The third family is deontology, and everybody knows about deontology, medical deontology. So it's principles that are written down, and that a certain domain has to follow. So it's obligations, most of them. But it's something that you don't reflect, you don't debate, you just obey. So I already talked about the approach top down or down up. It's complex because some says that we can only have a bottom up approach, because we only know the truth is on the experience, and experience is all. But my approach is to say that we need a top down approach also to integrate some principles. But they are both strategy of information processing and knowledge ordering. They use in variety of fields, including software, humanistic, and scientific terms, and management and organization. In practice, they can be seen as a style of thinking, teaching, or leadership. So everybody may know about this, but I want to be sure that people would understand that it's not because we say that is ethic by design, that is all top-down strategy, because the ethics would have to be evolutive, and will have to learn with the algorithms. So we'll talk now about the AI automated decision making. There's a lot of fields that we have to be looking on. So, but my interest is on automated decision making, and especially war weapons. So automated decision making involves the use of data, machines, and algorithms to make decisions in a range of contexts, including public administration, business, health, with varying degrees of human oversight or intervention. These decisions are based on factual data, numerical profiles, or even inferred data. So ethical and legal issue. UN official calls for moratorium on artificial intelligence tools that threatens human rights. So already we don't have, as we debate and as Pamela, I'm sure said it, we don't have legal framework today. So we really have to be active to make sure that we're going in the right decision. So for my part, I want to make that research because the UN make that moratorium, but it's only a break. It's only UN is making a break, but I mean, you can use those artificial systems even if UN says that there's no threat. I mean, it's just a recommendation, but the recommendation are not very strong. We know that in businesses, and also we talked about bias, but let me say a little bit more about bias over here. There is no guarantee that the typical population used in the design of a machine learning model corresponds to the population that will later affect the deployment of the system. Usually generalization is not always done in the best way. The choice of operators is not always analyzed. So it's dangerous, and that's why we are here today, and that's why we are talking about those challenges. So very quickly, I'm going to talk about a case study, which is predictive justice. Just for an introduction, when I was doing the workshop with CFAR, I had to propose a scenario, a fictive scenario, and I would let people talk to see what is the ethical challenges in this scenario. And there were a lot of predictive justice scenarios, and it was like scenarios in 10 years, 20 years. But we can imagine that predictive justice could be very strong, and they could make arrestation without human intervention. So the predictability of the judicial decision comes from the nature of the law itself. Why? Because it's the idea that the law and its application must be certain. So it comes from the fact that the law is something that we really can count on, and that we really could put into systems. But that's something that can be discussed also. Some applications combine data and software into new platforms that assist to prepare a strategic approach in different legal cases, and it's already active. I mean, for small cases, small legal cases are already made by robots. Also, facial recognition from street cameras or psychological analysis from social media could be used for prediction or trace of characters such as sexual predators. So there's some systems that can take the facial recognition information, that can take the social media information, and after the software puts those data, combine those data and make a conclusion that this guy or that woman or whatever is a sexual predator. But we know, we all know that bias could be inside those systems. So it's very important to see that there are also big difficulties over there, because the complexity there's a big complexity to translate in logical treatable from proposition to everyday lives. It's very difficult to interpret what somebody is saying in his social media compared to his real life. So deduction are not quite easy to make. After that, considering all the variables that come into play. So when the justice is predictive, do we have all the information that we need when that prediction is done? After that, there's many ambiguous concepts also in AI. So sometimes, and we have some funny examples that AI makes some really big mistakes by when it identifies people. And in China, you know that people were wearing T-shirts with a face just to distract the facial recognition systems. So we cannot really count. We cannot have confidence in those. We cannot trust. Those were very important. We cannot trust predictive justice from now because we have not already put some ethics and some security into those systems. So we really have to work together as we are doing now today to be very conscious of those challenges. So I want to link that discussion with cybersecurity, and I was thinking about the SPIT model from Pamela. So in decision making, the security intelligent decision-making systems must be cyber resilient with effective risk models that go beyond protecting training data of the infrastructure itself. So system has to be really cyber resilient with decision-making systems. Privacy, we talked about privacy. I won't go too far there because we said a lot. So and we all know that there's a gray area with the data construction here. Integrity also. There are AI systems that often show racial discrimination, and with the predictive justice, we can see that maybe some I don't know, some young guys will be pointed more than another one because he doesn't have the same color. So there's discrimination over there, and we have to, in ethics by design, we have to be concerned about what we put into systems, but also we have to really think about ourselves before putting something in the systems. We have to know our own bias. So we have to have that reflection, and I think it's time. It's a time. The civilization is now in front of their own morality. before they put it into systems. So there is to be a really strong reflection on what is right or wrong today for a human being. After the transparency.
Just for 1 second, I'm sorry. So I just want to do a little time check with you too, as I can't see. There we get to the end. So
it's the end.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah,
thank you.
So thank you very much, and I'll thank you everybody, and I want to everybody to know that it's we are at the beginning of something, and we have to work closely together. And thank you, Pamela, for that conference.
Yeah, Patricia, thank you so much. I'm really interested in the work you're doing with SDGs, the UN SDGs. I think that's all related to the AI for good. And also would like to float the idea of trust by design, because remember I was talking about, and thank you for talking about the AI tips model. I switched it to tips because SPIT had a negative connotation. So SPIT as in now is tips, and I have to send you the new slides. And thank you for sharing that in your part of the world in Canada. I really appreciate that. I think one thing that comes really clearly across is traditional security and privacy is not going to be sufficient for what we would want a wholesome AI system to look like. And that includes transparency as well as the integrity. And by integrity, I mean it not as in the CIA triad I talked about earlier, as the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which is typically what we have as this triad of security. But more holistically, it would need something along the lines of that tips model I was talking about. I'm really interested in talking to you about how we could make something which is, because I'm a big fan of Canada's, what they have done in terms of their autonomous systems risk assessment that has been rolled out to the businesses. It's not being held just by a few people. It's in the hands of people who are out there, companies who are out there implementing and designing. So really interested in seeing what we can do together. Thank you so much. Okay.
So Pam.
Yes.
We have Alan and we have Mark.
Okay. So let me see. We are on, let me just make sure I'm on the, I can share the slide to make it a slideshow. So it's not.
Yeah.
Give me 1 sec. Bill, did you want to give everybody a break for a second? Or?
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. Why don't we take like about a 3-minute break? It'll allow us to transition. Everybody probably was looking for a breather. And then we can be prepared for the next session.
Okay, so now we'll be going back into the entrepreneur world, and I mean into the business world. Let me just fix up this line here for it's not showing the slideshow, just the slide. So we'll be back at 1:40. Thank you.